Thanks in no small part to the rise of cell phones, the 2010s were the decade of the world going viral. For a time that many express a lot of nostalgia for, the 2010s kicked off with a number of tragic accidents, from the Deepwater Horizon spill to the Syrian refugee crisis. Among these years, though, were several notable transformations in scientific research and space exploration, as well as the rising wave of grassroots political activism. And when the decade's history unfolded, these weren't just events for the headlines, but clips captured in real time. In this video, the voice of Wither SG will be taking us through the decade past and breaking down the most important photos from each year of the 2010s.
On April 20th, 2010, the drilling rig Deepwater Horizon exploded after pressurized natural gas burst its faulty cement seal, causing 210 million gallons, or 795 million liters, of crude oil to spill out into the Gulf of Mexico. 2 days later, the rig capsized completely and sank into a valley of the continental shelf. In total, the incident resulted in the deaths of 11 people aboard the rig and the injuries of 17 more. But the most memorable casualties of the event weren't humans at all. Several species of marine mammals and various creatures, including sea turtles, birds, fish, and invertebrates, went partially extinct, sustaining major health issues as a result of the spill. Approximately 100,000 to 1 million birds were killed outright, and this study from Audubon Delta estimated that 10% of all the brown pelicans in the northern Gulf of Mexico died because of the oil spill. When the news of the Deepwater Horizon broke, Wynne McNamee, chief photographer for Getty Images, was sent into one of the worst affected regions on East Gontre Island, Louisiana. He worked several long 14-hour days documenting the extent of the crisis and aftermath. But for all of the time he spent photographing the scenes that lay before him, one photo stood out among the rest. On June 4th, he shot a brown pelican coated in the spill's petroleum and Corexit, a toxic chemical meant to break up the oil in the Gulf. The photo series he and other photographers shot that day was distributed by Getty Images and received widespread publication from news outlets across the globe. The roll not only featured similar pictures of oil-coated pelicans, but also ones of hermit crabs and laughing gulls, two other species significantly impacted by the disaster. The brown pelican stuck out, however, as it was Louisiana's own state bird and had just been removed from the endangered species list a few months prior, in November of 2009. Yet here it was, on the brink of death, drenched in oil and suffering through
the worst environmental disaster America has ever faced,
as U.S. President Barack Obama described the incident in a primetime address. Following 9/11, the terrorist leader behind al-Qaeda's attack, Osama bin Laden, had managed to evade capture by the American forces hunting him down for over a decade by this point, and although he'd largely retreated and the group's influence had greatly diminished, the war on terror continued. On May 1st, 2011, Air Force Brigadier General Brad Webb sat at the table monitoring the raid on bin Laden's compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, as SEAL Team 6 led its forces through the Operation Neptune Spear mission to kill Osama bin Laden. As he watched, then director of the U.S. Counterterrorism Center, Michael Leiter, walked in, followed by Robert Gates, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and several others. Shortly after, then President Barack Obama entered, commenting, "I need to watch this," before taking a seat next to Webb. Though the timeline is unclear for this, Leiter left at some point in the next hour. Around 40 minutes after the group had been sat waiting, bin Laden was killed at approximately 3:30 p.m. Allegedly, right about this time, White House photographer Peter Souza shot this photo from his perch in a corner of the small conference room adjacent to the Situation Room where the officials had gathered. On December 14th, 2012, 20-year-old Adam Lanza used the .22 caliber rifle his mother had purchased to shoot and kill her as he left the home the two shared in Newtown, Connecticut. Armed with the .22, as well as the AR-15 and several other firearms and rounds of ammunition his mother had bought, Lanza drove her car to Sandy Hook Elementary School and shot his way through a window to get inside the building. From there, he began his rampage, killing both Sandy Hook principal Dawn Hochsprung and school psychologist Mary Sherlock that confronted him immediately after his entrance. The school was then put on lockdown, but Lanza continued and went on to empty 154 rounds in less than 5 minutes, ending a total of 26 lives and injuring 2 others. Once the attack scale became clear, dozens of state and local police officers arrived at the scene, only for Lanza to then, after killing so many, take himself out with a handgun. In the wake of the attack, many photos of Adam Lanza were circulated, some of them real, some of them fake. But the photo you're probably most familiar with is this one. It's the most popular choice to use when talking about his crimes, and it ends up in a lot of mass shooter collages. And it's not hard to imagine why. In so many ways, it's the perfect embodiment of the image that springs to mind when we think of a crazed mass shooter. So powerful is his alignment with that horrid archetype that many of the traits he embodied, quiet, antisocial, chronically online, obsessed with other mass shooters, became staples of the mainstream idea of a school shooter, before a pattern of these behaviors among that sort of criminals even emerged. Despite the impact that it had, the origin of this photo is somewhat murky. Oftentimes, it's news outlets attributing it to other news outlets. It's also often conflated with this similar photo that was taken by Western Connecticut State University in Danbury. The original has been traced back to Lanza's ID photo at Newtown High School, likely taken when he joined the school around 2007, as this archive for Sandy Hook suggests, though it's not confirmed if this is the actual origin since we have no idea who runs this site. On its 174th day on Mars, Curiosity made its first drill mark into the Martian rock. Without rotating the bit as it normally might, they just used percussion tests to bang at the rock. This mode resulted in a small bite taken out of the planet, but the sequence failed out before it finished, meaning that the following Martian day was a run-out, in which the rover executes a safe sequence involving remote sensing but no arm work, something that, while it sent the mission back, is fairly normal. Curiosity tests in the following days were designed to collect powdered rock samples for analysis, specifically from the John Klein site within Yellowknife Bay on Mars. The site was chosen due to its relatively soft target rock, making it perfect for Curiosity to drill into. The photographs documenting its preparations to drill into the rock were extensive, and the before and after photos of the percussion-only drilling process showed that Curiosity was, for the first time, successful in its mission. Despite this, the photo we remember from it isn't any of this, but rather this shot. See, apparently, the Curiosity team thought that the site was a great spot to double as a selfie location. So, before Curiosity went into its preparations for the drilling, it sat and shot 64 photos that, once assembled, became one. The frames were taken with the Mars Hand Lens Imager, a camera attached to the end of the robot's arm. Now, neither the arm or MAHLI appears in this panoramic mosaic photo, as engineers managed to carefully position it just out of frame and move the arm while keeping the mounted camera in the same spot, helping to minimize parallax, where the position or direction of an object appears to change when viewed from different positions. These micro adjustments of the arm and camera, combined with the fact frames could easily be swapped out for other frames to create the mosaic, allowed for the exclusion of the robotic arm and MAHLI in the final assembled photograph that released on February 3, 2013, marking a step forward for the Curiosity mission and a visual milestone for the public. On August 9, 2014, 6 years before this kind of atrocity garnered large-scale national attention, Michael Brown, an unarmed 18-year-old black man, was shot to death by police officer Darren Wilson in Ferguson, Missouri. Regarding Brown, there are some conflicting narratives of how it went down. The police claim that Brown was suspected of robbing a nearby store, so when they allegedly saw the items in his possession, they opened fire. Some witnesses say that Brown put his hands up and ran. Other accounts say that he made no threatening or sudden movements toward the cops, contradicting the official police account that Brown charged Wilson and tried to grab his gun. With the muddled, unclear nature of these reports arose a gray zone of questioning, and in that gray zone of questioning arose racial tensions. Tensions that led to protests in the St. Louis area and then across the nation. Some of these protests were peaceful, while others caused incidents of looting and violence, leading to a curfew being established and riot squads deployed to the surrounding area. A grand jury convened to see and investigate Wilson and determine if he should be charged with any crimes related to the murder. This process took several months before it even reached a decision, and during this period, tensions in Ferguson continued to rise exponentially. Cops came out to protest with tear gas, rubber bullets, smoke bombs, and flash grenades to disperse the crowds of demonstrators. On the scene, media reporters were caught in the line of the cops tear gassing. Compounding the violence directed at the media, several reports even suggested that the police tried to forcibly take down their cameras and suppress coverage of the protests. 4 days after the shooting, on August 13th, the protests reached their height. In one such demonstration, riot police fired a burning tear gas canister into a crowd to disperse protesters. Fortunately, or unfortunately, they missed and the canister flew a couple feet away on the sidewalk by a man and a few kids. In what he recalls was an attempt to get the canister away from him and the children, the man, Edward Crawford, cocked back his arm to throw the still burning canister while holding a bag of chips in his other hand. Seconds before Crawford pitched the tear gas canister, photographer Robert Cohen of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch shot a photo. Quickly, this became a symbol of black resistance against the oppressive force of the Ferguson police. It's since been printed on countless t-shirts, plastered on cell phone cases and across Twitter, and repurposed in a seemingly infinite number of ways. And though visually this was the height of the unrest, it got worse. On November 24th, the grand jury that had been investigating Wilson announced their decision not to charge Wilson for any crime committed. The crowd of anxious and already bitter citizens waited outside the Ferguson Police Department until the verdict was announced. Then, they became violent. Protesters threw rocks at parked cars and set fire to several surrounding buildings, wreaking havoc and violence on the city for almost 2 days straight. To quell the protests, Missouri Governor Jay Nixon deployed the National Guard and sent out reinforcements to cops in the area, finally bringing the riots to a temporary stop. Several more protests broke out in the following months, and in light of the developments, investigations were reopened into the Ferguson Police Department, with the DOA issuing orders that Ferguson fix its criminal justice system. Not long after, Ferguson Police Chief Thomas Jackson stepped down, effectively ending the protest era in the city. Cohen and other photographers from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch went on to win the 2015 Pulitzer Prize for breaking news photography, and when George Floyd went on to be murdered in 2020, this reopened the same discussion once more. In 2015, 3-year-old Alan Kurdi, his 5-year-old brother Galip, and their parents Abdullah and Rehana attempted what hundreds of thousands of people in the same position did: flee their war-torn, violent homes in hopes of a better life in Europe. For Alan and his family, they were fleeing Kobani, Syria, in favor of a safer land in the Greek island of Kos. But only one of them made it. Along the way, Alan, his brother, and his mother died by drowning. On September 2nd, 2015, Alan's lifeless body washed up on a Turkish beach. Nearby, photographer Nilofer Demir of Turkey's Doğan news agency captured the toddler's image. Quote, "There was nothing to do except taking his photograph. There was nothing to do, and that is exactly what I did. I thought this is the only way I can express the scream of his silent body." This photo, and the second image portraying a grim cop carrying off the small body, went viral amid the refugee crisis. Within just a few hours, the picture had gone viral, shooting up to the trending tab of Twitter under the hashtag #KiYavuraninsalok, which is humanity washed ashore in Turkish. Until that photo, many didn't seem aware of or focus on the Syrian refugee crisis, but Alan's posthumous virality spurred empathy and concern into motion, quickly bringing in record donations to charity organizations across the globe. In this graph, you can see the spike in donations of money sent to the Swedish Red Cross, specifically to aid Syrian refugees. Here, you can see the spike in Google searches for Alan refugees in Syria. Both shifts coincide directly with the month of September 2015. The photo and the reactions it garnered also became the subject of a 2017 study from the National Academy of Sciences, also where we got our graphs from, about how these images influence our emotions in support of humanitarian disasters. I tease it now, but we'll revisit it in the outro. By 2016, Instagram was around 6 years old since its launch in October 2010, and well on its way to success as the up-and-coming app for social networking and photo sharing. But Instagram had quickly deviated from its original intent, with people really only posting the highlights of their life to the app for likes and validation. This article is from 2016, by the way. The gamification of social media discourse is a decade old. In August 2016, Instagram, realizing the direction their app was headed in, decided to blatantly rip off Snapchat by adding their own version of stories. The feature was for lower quality content that just wasn't good enough for or didn't fit with the regular Instagram feed. And it worked exactly like Snapchat stories, as the CEO even admitted, allowing you to post temporary photo and video slideshows that disappear within 24 hours of upload. In the words of at-the-time CEO Kevin Systrom, it basically solves a problem for all these people who want to take a ton of photos of an event or something in their lives, but want to manage what their profile looks like and not bomb feed, obviously, as that's one of the no-nos on Instagram. Late September 14th, 2017, NASA's Cassini spacecraft sent back its final images of Saturn and a few of its moons before intentionally sinking into the top of the planet's atmosphere and melting to death, after about 2 decades in space. Cassini was set and launched to photograph not only Saturn, but also Enceladus and Titan, 2 of Saturn's most prominent moons, in its mission, revealing that, contrary to prior thought, Enceladus has a subsurface ocean that could support life. Over the course of the 13 years that Cassini made Saturn its home, it extensively documented everything it could about the planet in thousands of raw pictures, including this shot of its look back at Earth through Saturn's rings. Then, after scientists had documented everything else they desired to see, Cassini took its plunge towards Saturn, in the process taking the closest ever photo of the planet and the last ever photo of its mission, before disintegrating into Saturn's atmosphere. And although this is the actual final image, many instead remember this nicer looking one in its place, partly because it gives a clearer picture of the planet for the average layman, partly because it's just better framed from a technical perspective, and partly because it has those eerily final shadows that seem to emotionally coincide with Cassini's inevitable death by suicide. On February 6, 2018, SpaceX launched its founder Elon Musk's personal Tesla Roadster into outer space atop a 3 million pound Falcon Heavy rocket. The Tesla was initially intended as just a throwaway dummy for Falcon Heavy's first mission test, and Musk himself predicted that there was only about a 50-50 shot at success. But after the launch proved effortless and went off without a hitch, he spoke of bigger hopes for the spacecraft. As part of SpaceX's end goal of colonizing Mars for people to settle on, Musk hopes this will ultimately serve as fantasy of humans living on other planets, and that if/when they do, his descendants will be able to drag the Roadster back to a museum. Prior to its launch, SpaceX lighted the car up with numerous Easter eggs and bits. The driver of the Roadster, for example, is a mannequin by the name of Starman, dressed up in a spacesuit. On the car's dashboard, there's a sign that reads "Don't Panic," referencing The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. With it also came a data storage device containing the works of Isaac Asimov, who wrote the Foundation book series, and is considered to be one of the best and most prolific science fiction writers, in addition to a plaque inscribed with the names of thousands of SpaceX employees. Basically, the launch was an ego trip of tech's biggest autist, which at the time was chill because almost everyone loved Elon. Exempting a few bitter souls, this move and this man were almost universally respected and admired back then. And despite the big deal that was made of this launch, there isn't exactly much documentation of the Roadster's orbits. See, after the launch, we've never really seen the Roadster. Aside from these famous launch photos, all of which are taken and shared by SpaceX, we have no other visual record of this thing. No scientist is out here tracking and measuring Starman's journey because the craft has no predictive or informational value that it provides to the future of science. All of the current data we have on it comes from the calculated estimates and projections of the car's trajectory. The Event Horizon Telescope is an Earth-sized array that combines 8 existing ground-based telescopes all across the world to capture pictures of black holes. And on April 10, 2019, it achieved its mission, with researchers unveiling the photos the telescope had taken, cementing the first direct visual evidence of a supermassive black hole and its shadow. As you may have been able to guess, photographing black holes is extremely difficult, and we didn't succeed in doing that here. Given that black holes carry with them huge masses contained in very compact sizes, they warp space-time and they superheat everything around them, including cameras and telescopes. The Event Horizon Telescope did not break through the bounds of what we thought possible by directly photographing a black hole, but instead captured the image of its shadow, which we have also never seen before. Barring any major changes to the science here, this is the closest that we can come to seeing a real picture of a black hole because, as the name might suggest, black holes are completely dark objects from which no light can escape. The release of the photograph was accompanied by a series of 6 papers from the Astrophysical Journal editors. This photo shows the black hole at the center of Messier 87, a large galaxy in the Virgo galaxy cluster. And although M87's black hole is 55 million light-years from Earth, that's not really that far relatively, and it has an enormous mass that's 6.5 billion times that of the Sun, making it one of the largest viewable black holes from Earth.
Well, that's the most important photos of the 2020s in a nutshell. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment down below. It really helps out the channel. Subscribe to WitherSG, who narrated this episode, and give him some love. Paid content available on Patreon, including deleted and exclusive videos. So you're going to want to check that out. And for now, thank you for watching. And reminder to anyone who's made it thus far, this is a clipped segment from a longer upcoming video about the most important photos of the 21st century thus far. So stay tuned for that to come down the pipeline. There's a video up right now about the most important photos from the 2020s, so if you like this one, maybe you'd like the same thing for the decade after, voiced by me. And if you really want to get hyped for the 21st century vid, watch the minute intro teaser to the full video, also available right now.